Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Streamlining the Biologics Development Process from Transient to Stable Production in the ExpiCHO System. It is presented by John Zmuda, Ph.D., Director of Cell Biology in the Life Sciences Solutions Group at Thermo Fisher Scientific. My name is Judy O'Rourke, and I will be your moderator for today's event. We are delighted to bring you this educational web seminar presented by LabRoots. LabRoots is the leading scientific social networking website and producer of educational virtual events and webinars. Before we begin, I would like to remind everyone that this event is interactive. We encourage you to participate by submitting as many questions as you want during the presentation. Simply click on the Ask a Question box located on the far left of your screen and type your questions into the drop-down box. Our speaker will respond to your questions via email following the presentation. If you have trouble seeing or hearing the presentation, please click on the Ask a Question box to let us know that you're experiencing a problem. This presentation is educational and thus offers continuing education credits. Please click on the Continuing Education Credits tab located in the top right corner of the presentation window and follow the process to obtain your credits. Now, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Dr. Zmuda. I will now turn the presentation over to him.
Thank you, Judy, for the introduction. As Judy mentioned, my name is Jonathan Zmuda. I'm a Director of Cell Biology at Thermo Fisher Scientific, based in Frederick, Maryland, in the U.S. And today I will be talking about streamlining the biologics development process, going from transient protein expression to stable production using the ExpiCHO expression system. So the first question is, why CHO cells for transient expression? And I think most of us on the call today will realize that CHO is still the preeminent cell line for bioproduction of biologics and various therapeutic entities. And to date, still 70% or greater of biologics are manufactured in CHO cells. And it appears as though that trend will certainly stay similar for the next years or decades to come. So accurate post-translational modifications make CHO-derived proteins relevant for critical studies, including biological activity, pharmacokinetics, and pharmacodynamics, as well as the instances where some proteins simply won't express well in HEC293 cells, another typical cell line utilized for transient protein expression. And ideally, what we would like to see out of the transient CHO-derived material is a predictive potential for using the results that we see in the transient derived material insights into the stable CHO production setting. So overall, what we would like to see and be able to enable is a seamless transition from discovery to clinic to commercial manufacturing, such that we de-risk the biologics development process by starting our work in CHO and staying in CHO throughout the entire commercial development process. So in the past, historically, what were the challenges with transient CHO? And as we see on the slide here in the right, using the ExpiCHO expression system based on HEC293 cells, researchers are able to get typically in the hundreds of milligrams per liter to gram per liter range expression for their antibodies. However, the older CHO-based systems, such as freestyle CHO, typically had about a 50 to 100-fold lower expression rate, often in the 10 to 20 milligram per liter range, which really wasn't enough protein for researchers to do the types of studies that they needed to do. So this led to a very high cost in terms of both time and dollars per milligram of protein when generated in the transient CHO cells of the time. However, the alternatives, including making stable cell lines in CHO, significantly lengthened timelines and cost associated with that protein production. So for many years, researchers were more or less required to make the protein that they needed in the 293 cells where they could get higher titers versus the very small amounts of proteins coming out of the CHO transient systems. So how were we able to attain higher titers in the transient protein expression field? And really very similar to ExpiCHO293, as I showed in the last slide, that has been enabled by utilizing a systems-based approach, whereby the cells, the media, the transaction reagents, the vector, the feeds and expression enhancer are all optimized to work together and synergistically such that the biggest protein titers available from transient protein expression can be attained. And in the case of the ExpiCHO system, that system comprises the ExpiCHO-S high expressing cell line, the coordinate ExpiCHO expression media, the expifectamine high efficiency transfection reagent, the ExpiCHO feed and enhancer to enable and to boost the highest expression levels out of the cells, as well as a high expressing pcDNA 3.4 vector. And it's only when all of these components are put together and utilized that we can get these very big synergistic boosts in transient protein expression, such that we can get very high titers out of CHO cells, and in many instances, even higher than in the traditional HEC-293 based transient systems. So all of this starts foundationally with our ExpiCHO-S cells. And some of the key attributes of this cell line is that these cells, the ExpiCHO GM-CHO-S cells, are derived from our GMP-CHO-S cell line. They're adapted for high density culture, so these cells will reach greater than 20 million cells per mil in standard shake flask cultures. They double very rapidly, so about a 17 to 18 hour doubling time. They have a high transfection efficiency, and they're stable for growth and expression profiles for at least 20 passages. These cells, as I'll show later, generate proteins that have CHO-like glycosylation profiles and post-translational modifications. And the protein coming out of these cells is high quality and biologically active. And to date, we do also have a GMP ExpiCHO cell banks that are available for biologics manufacturing in the GMP settings. So as we look at some of the expression levels, here we show expression in the ExpiCHO transient expression system for a panel of 5 biosimilar human monoclonal or humanized monoclonal antibodies. And here we see across these 5 monoclonal antibodies, expression levels in the 1 to 2 plus gram per liter range. And these transient expression levels really rival some CHO production. And certainly the stable CHO has come a long way, and the titers have been significantly improved over the years. But these are within this gram per liter range that will certainly allow researchers to generate the material that they need for their preclinical studies in using CHO-derived protein. So this high level of protein expression allows for protein discovery in very small scales. So previously, relatively larger scales had to be utilized to get the protein that was required out of CHO cells. However, with these very high gram per liter and higher levels of protein expression, researchers are enabled to go into 96 deep well plates for 1 to 2 ml expression runs, high throughput screening type formats. The 24 deep well plates that allows up to about 3.5 mLs of expression, as well as the 50 ml mini bioreactors that you see on the right-hand side of the slide that allows up to about 25 milliliters of expression. So these high titers have enabled scale down of the system such that discovery can begin very early on in the transient CHO system, scaled up into the 25 ml mini bioreactors, as well as then scaled all the way to 3 or 5 liter shake flasks, at which time typically the high expression levels of the system will allow you to achieve the titers that you need for your research. So following on, in terms of high throughput screening, we have automated the ExpiCHO system as well to run on the Amber 15 system, such that we can identify conditions that are optimal for high throughput screening using the ExpiCHO system. And here the conditions are quite similar to what we utilize for high throughput in the manual setting, with only slight differences in terms of how the complexation reaction is generated, such that the complexes remain stable and allow for the highest transfection efficiency and protein titers during the automated expression run on the Amber 15 system. The material and proteins that are generated in the ExpiCHO system also have the potential to be modulated in terms of their post-translational modifications. And two examples here, one done in our lab, shown on the left-hand side, where we've modulated the glycosylation patterns of the ExpiCHO-derived proteins, starting from the red bar, which is what the ExpiCHO system delivers in its holistic format. And then when we have added in feeds of different glycan modulations, you can see that we go from about a 90% G0F glycoform down to about 70% G0F by modulating the feed profile in the ExpiCHO system, such that we've changed by about 20% the level of G0F. In the blue bar, you'll actually see the corresponding glycosylation patterns of the ExpiCHO system. So we've actually been able to drive down that G0F, and you can see the concordant increase in the G1F and G1F2, as well as the G2F glycoforms as we modulate them in the ExpiCHO system, similar to how the stable CHO-derived materials can be modulated in the bioreactor setting. In the upper right, you'll see the header for a recently published paper discussing optimizing the N-glycansilation for therapeutic glycoproteins in the ExpiCHO system. So very similar to how glycoforms and post-translational modifications can be optimized in a stable CHO setting, we've attained similar optimizations and changes to the post-translational modifications of proteins in the transient ExpiCHO setting. In terms of protein quality, what you see on the left-hand side is a non-reduced gel for purified human IgG samples. And on lanes 3, 4, and 6, you'll see ExpiCHO-derived material, transiently derived material, from the 3 different ExpiCHO protocols, the standard, high titer, and max titer protocols. And at the bottom, you'll see the corresponding grams per liter of titer for those various samples. In lane 7, you'll see the same protein expressed in a stable CHO-S setting, and in lane 8, expressed in ExpiCHO transient 293-based system. So both for the non-reduced on the left and the reduced samples on the right, we see very similar banding patterns post-protein A purification for the protein, regardless of whether it was generated in the transient or stable CHO or ExpiCHO setting, as well as regardless of the titer attained in the crude supernatant. If we look at size exclusion chromatography following protein A purification for the ExpiCHO system, on the top you'll see our standard titer ExpiCHO transient expression run that's performed at 37C, and you'll see the chromatograms for day 5 and day 8 harvest times. And in both instances, we have 94 to 95% monomer. In the middle chromatogram, you'll see utilizing the ExpiCHO high titer expression run, where we shift the temperature to 32C. And here we've harvested on day 5 and day 11, again, between about 94 and 95% monomer. And lastly, on the bottom, where we've utilized the max titer expression run, where we utilize 2 feeds and a 32C temp shift and harvest all the way out at day 14, very similar to a stable CHO expression run. Again, we're still in that 95% monomer criteria. So we're getting very good monomeric protein regardless of the temperature of expression and the day of harvest in the ExpiCHO transient system. Lastly, when looking at glycosylation patterns, we can see in the top chromatogram, we see the ExpiCHO transient glyco pattern. We see about 82% G0F with less of the G1F and G2F, so primarily G0F and ExpiCHO transient. Very similar to stable CHO-S in the middle lane, about 87% G0F, but both of these significantly different than ExpiCHO, where we see more of the G1F and G2F glycoforms compared to either of the CHO systems. So both transient ExpiCHO and stable CHO-S derived human IgG have very similar glyco patterns compared to ExpiCHO that are quite different. So in the next part of my presentation, I would like to introduce some new reagents that allow for further streamlining the transient to GMP stable protein production using our newly released ExpiCHO stable production medium. And so this ExpiCHO stable production medium that you see on the right and our ExpiCHO GMP cell banked cells are additions to the ExpiCHO transient expression system, such that now we enable a through the GMP manufacturing, large-scale manufacturing of ExpiCHO-derived proteins. The ExpiCHO stable production media is available both in a liquid and in an AGT, or advanced granulation technology, dry format that tremendously helps to streamline scale up production. So some of the key benefits of the AGT dry format is that the AGT, upon reconstitution, auto-pHs itself, so it's a simple addition of water. There's a very fast dissolution and mixing time. There's dust-free addition to the tank and minimal filtration pressure buildup during the reconstitution. So all of this allows for the easy scale-up of stable ExpiCHO production runs utilizing the AGT formatted ExpiCHO stable expression medium. So I'll now move into a case study on developing a high-producing ExpiCHO-S stable clone. And what we show here is the very typical stable cell line development workflow, going from thawing your ExpiCHO-S GMP cell bank to allowing those cells to grow for a number of passages, 2 to 4 passages. And then these cells are transfected. So these cells are grown in the ExpiCHO expression media for the transient protein expression. They're transfected using the ExpiFectamine-CHO transfection reagent. And then they go through a very typical 2-step selection process, in this case, an antibiotic selection process. The cells are then put through limited dilution cloning, and the resultant clones are scaled up and primary and secondary screen, followed by tertiary testing in a fed batch shake flask environment, and leading into a clonal stability study. So what we show here is very typical selection curves for ExpiCHO single cell clones. On the left-hand side, you see the pool viability following the first selection, and then the recovery, followed by the second selection to generate their final stable clones. So from these stably transfected clones, in our primary screen, we generated 95 clones. Following stability assessment, 35 of them showed good stability over multiple passages. Following the secondary screen for protein expression, we identified 8 clones. The tertiary screen generated our top 3. And finally, we picked our final clone based on this screening scenario. So here we were able to generate a single ExpiCHO clone producing greater than 3 grams per liter of a human IgG, which is consistent with the typical titer today of about 3 to 3.5 grams per liter from stably expressing CHO cell lines. Although, as I mentioned previously, many systems now will generate higher titers in the 10 gram per liter, but this 3 gram per liter that we were able to attain was with very minimal optimization of the system, as we were simply looking for a model protein to demonstrate the ability of moving from transient ExpiCHO to stable ExpiCHO. So the other nice thing about sticking with the ExpiCHO expression media into the stable production media is that the ExpiCHO cells can be directly adapted into the same media used for. See in red, the CHO expression media. So this is used for the transient expression system. And in blue, the ExpiCHO stable production media. And here I will take a moment to just point out one difference between these two medias, is that the ExpiCHO expression media is useful for transient expression. So it has no components that impact negatively transient protein expression. whereas the ExpiCHO stable production media does have componentry that is more tailored to stable production in a large format that will inhibit transient protein expression. So all transient expression of the proteins and the generation of the stable cell lines should be performed in the ExpiCHO expression media. Here we show again in red and blue that either the ExpiCHO expression media for transient expression or the ExpiCHO stable production media in blue have very similar growth profiles over multiple passages. And there's a seamless transition of the cells from the ExpiCHO transient expression media into the stable production media. In gray, we show two competitor media where we see lower growth rates as well as more variability in the viable cell densities at the time of harvest for those different medias. So again, this direct adaptation from the transient to the stable media saves time and effort in that this is a seamless transition from one to the next. Similarly, this stable ExpiCHO-S clone was run in an Amber 15 fed batch process. And once again, in blue and red, you see the ExpiCHO stable production media. Here, the blue circles indicate ExpiCHO stable production media formulated from the AGT powdered format, and in red from standard liquid manufacturing process. Both of these, once again, you'll see that the ExpiCHO-S cells, and this will attain much higher viable cell densities throughout the course of the expression run compared to either of the competitor medias. And on the right-hand side, you can see once again that in the Amber 15 small-scale process, this clone is still expressing in the 3 to 3.5 gram per liter range for either the ExpiCHO AGT or liquid media, and significantly higher than either of the competitor media. We next look to scale up this ExpiCHO-S clone, stable clone, into large-scale stir tank bioreactors. And here we show data going into a 50-liter Thermo Scientific high-performa single-use bioreactor. On the left-hand side, we see the viable cell density traces, once again attaining that 15 to 20 million cells per mil viable cell density. And on the right-hand side, we see the accumulation of the immunoglobulin being produced over about 17 days, once again hitting that 3.5 approximately gram per liter maximum titer during this expression run. So we've shown now between shake flasks, Amber microbioreactors, and all the way up to 50-liter single-use bioreactors, getting very consistent protein titers out of this ExpiCHO-S stable clone. And similar to the data that I showed earlier, comparing the transient glycosylation profiles of ExpiCHO to stable CHO-S and XP293 cells, here we're showing on the left glycosylation patterns for transient ExpiCHO-derived human IgG, and on the right, stably expressing ExpiCHO clones expressing the same human IgG. And very typical of what we see in these glycosylation profiles, there tend to be some minimal differences between the transient and the stable. And of note, calling out here in the transient, we sometimes will see very long expression runs. So here, harvested on day 14, you can sometimes see a slight uptick in the MAN5 at these very long harvest dates in the transient system. As these transient shake flasks are building up and accumulating metabolic waste at that time, they don't have the similar amount of control as the bioreactors, whereas you see on the right with the very controlled bioreactors, the level of MAN5 is extremely low. One other typical change that we see is a bit of an uptick in the G1F profile in the stable setting versus in the transient setting, where we typically see very consistently G0F as the predominant glycoform. But in general, both of these patterns are quite similar with just some of the characteristic differences in transient versus stable that we've witnessed in multiple molecules. So with that, I'd like to just summarize this talk today and really discuss this seamless solution for transient to stable protein production in ExpiCHO. And the ExpiCHO system from transient to stable provides the ability for researchers to generate rapid, high titer transient protein expression using a relevant CHO cell background. It enables this seamless flow from transient to stable CHO, generates consistent product quality attributes between ExpiCHO transient and ExpiCHO stable derived protein, as well as allowing for the licensing of GMP-banked ExpiCHO-S cell line, such that a researcher working in transient ExpiCHO and looking to de-risk their movement into stable cell line production can now work directly through transient ExpiCHO into a stable CHO bioproduction, a GMP setting. And finally, the launch of the ExpiCHO stable production media available in both liquid or AGT format allows for large-scale stable production in the ExpiCHO cell background. So with that, I'd just like to take a moment to acknowledge a number of folks on the R&D team for the ExpiCHO transient system, as well as for our ExpiCHO stable production media. And with that, I thank you, and I look forward to answering questions coming from this presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Zmuda, for that informative presentation. I would also like to thank LabRoots for making today's educational webcast possible. Before we go, I want to let everyone know that this webcast will be available for on-demand viewing through April 30th, 2019. As a final reminder, our speaker will follow up with any questions you've submitted via email. That's all for now. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time. Bye.